The acid rain hammered against the reinforced plasteel windows of New Vanguard Station. Like 1,000 skeletal fingers clawing for entry, Commander Kira Voss pressed her palm against the barrier, watching the corrosive droplets carve fresh scars into the surface. Beyond the toxic deluge, the twin suns of Kepler 440 to see cast in sickly orange glow through the perpetual storm clouds, illuminating a landscape that would liquefy most galactic species within minutes. "Beautiful morning," muttered Chief Engineer Rakesh Patel, joining her at the observation deck. His bionic arm whirred softly as he adjusted the atmospheric readings on his wrist display. Temps holding steady at 48 Celsius, humidity at 93%, and the air's only about 15% sulfur dioxide today. Practically paradise. Voss allowed herself a grim smile. Paradise. That's what the Galactic Council had called it when they banished humanity to this hellscape 73 years ago. Deathworld Colony 7 Alpha, they designated it officially. The humans had renamed it Kepler's Garden out of spite. A proximity alarm shattered the morning's toxic tranquility. Both officers spun toward the central command console, where Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka's fingers danced across holographic displays with practiced urgency. "Contact on long-range sensors," Tanaka reported, her voice tight with concern. "Single vessel. Velthari configuration, they're broadcasting standard diplomatic channels." But she paused, her enhanced eye cybernetic replacements after an acid storm incident glowing amber as she processed the data. "Commander, they're requesting permission to land." The observation deck fell silent except for the relentless drumming of acid rain. In 7 decades, no alien vessel had ever voluntarily approached Kepler's Garden. The Galactic Council's quarantine protocols were absolute. Humanity was to remain isolated on their toxic prison world until they either died out or learned to civilize themselves according to galactic standards. Voss moved to the command console, her boots echoing on the reinforced deck plating. The station around them wore the scars of humanity's stubborn survival. Jury-rigged life support systems, armor plating welded over structural weak points, and the ever-present hum of atmospheric processors working overtime to create pockets of breathable air within their sealed environment. "Run full-spectrum analysis on that ship," she ordered. "I want to know everything. Crew complement. Weapons systems. Cargo manifest if you can crack their encryption." "Already on it," Patel said, his augmented neural interface linking directly to the station sensor array. "Velthari diplomatic cruiser, crew of 12, minimal defensive armament." "But Commander," his expression darkened, "they're not alone. I'm detecting a stealth signature approximately 2,000,000 kilometers behind them. Multiple vessels, running dark." Tanaka's fingers froze over her console. "That's impossible. Nothing can maintain stealth in this system's electromagnetic interference. The solar radiation alone would, unless they develop new technology specifically designed to operate in extreme conditions." Voss interrupted, pieces of a horrifying puzzle clicking into place. "Like the kind of conditions we've adapted to survive in." The implications hung in the air like the toxic atmosphere outside. Humanity had been quarantined not just as punishment, but as an unwitting research project. 73 years of watching how they adapted, how they innovated, how they thrived in conditions that would kill any other species. "Orders, Commander," Patel asked, his hand instinctively moving to the emergency weapons activation panel. Voss stared at the sensor readings, her mind racing through tactical possibilities. The station held 37 human scientists, engineers, miners, and a handful of security personnel. They had mining equipment that could be weaponized, atmospheric processors that could be turned into chemical warfare devices, and most importantly, they had 7 decades of experience surviving in hell. "Grant landing permission to the diplomatic vessel," she said finally, "but prep the station for full lockdown. And Rakesh, yes, Commander, wake up the miners. Tell them to bring their excavation charges." Her smile was sharp as the acid rain. "If the galaxy wants to study how humans survive on a death world, they're about to get a very personal demonstration." The station's intercom crackled to life as Voss activated the colony-wide alert system throughout New Vanguard Station, in the underground mining complexes, and in the sealed habitation domes scattered across Kepler's Garden. 37 humans began preparing for a war they've been training for their entire lives. Without knowing it, outside, the acid rain continued to fall, each drop a reminder of the hostile universe that had tried to break them. It had failed. Now, It was humanity's turn to show their neighbors exactly what it meant to call a death world home. The Velthari diplomatic shuttle descended through Kepler's garden's toxic atmosphere, like a silver needle threading through poison. Ambassador Quillenth watched through the craft's viewport as the human settlement materialized. Through the corrosive haze, a sprawling complex of interconnected domes and towers that seemed to grow from the planet's scarred surface like metallic fungi. Magnificent, he whispered to his aide, a young Velthari named Salandra, whose golden scales had dulled with nervousness. 73 years, and they built an entire civilization in conditions that would kill us in moments. The shuttle's atmospheric sensors screamed warnings as they descended temperatures that would boil Velthari blood, air that would dissolve their exoskeletons, radiation levels that would cook their internal organs. Yet below them, humans walked between buildings, worked in exposed areas, some wearing nothing more than basic protective gear. As they touched down on the designated landing pad, Quillenth noticed the welcome committee waiting for them. 3 humans stood in the open air, their skin glistening with what appeared to be protective oils, breathing apparatus hanging loose around their necks like jewelry. The tallest, a woman with cybernetic eyes and scars mapping her exposed arms, stepped forward as the shuttle's ramp descended. Ambassador Quillenth, Commander Voss said, her voice carrying clearly through the external speakers, "Welcome to Kepler's garden. I trust your journey through our atmosphere was educational." Quillenth emerged from his environmental suit's protective shell, staying carefully within the shuttle's filtered air envelope. "Commander Voss, I presume your reputation for survival precedes you. Our reputation for a lot of things precedes U.S." Chief Patel interjected, his bionic arm gleaming in the orange sunlight. "Though I suspect you're here to confirm some theories rather than exchange pleasantries." The ambassador's gill slits fluttered the Velthari equivalent of nervous laughter. "Direct as always. Yes, Commander, we can bear in an offer from the Galactic Council. Recent developments in the Outer Rim have created a need for species with unique survival capabilities." Lieutenant Tanaka, positioned slightly behind and to the left of Voss, tilted her head. Her augmented hearing had caught something the others missed, the subtle shift in electromagnetic frequencies that indicated scanning equipment. "Commander," she said quietly, "they're recording everything. Biological responses, environmental adaptations, even our conversation." Voss's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. "Of course they are. Please, Ambassador, continue. What kind of developments?" Quillenth's scales rippled with discomfort. He hadn't expected them to detect the scanning so quickly. "A hostile species has emerged from the galactic core. They call themselves the Vakari, and they possess technology that can render entire worlds uninhabitable to conventional life. The Council needs soldiers who can operate in conditions like this," Voss finished, gesturing at the acid rain beginning to spatter the landing pad. "You need us to fight your war in places too dangerous for civilized species. The compensation would be substantial," Quillenth said hastily. "Full citizenship restoration, terraforming rights for 3 habitable worlds, advanced technology transfers." A sharp crack interrupted his pitch. Patel had crushed a fragment of the landing pad's concrete in his bionic grip. "The materials analysis complete. This isn't a diplomatic visit," he announced. "This concrete contains Velthari sensor nanites. You've been studying our construction materials. The atmosphere, already toxic, suddenly turned lethal in an entirely different way." Tanaka's hand moved to the mining charge clipped to her belt, while Voss stepped forward, closing the distance to the shuttle. "Ambassador," she said, her voice carrying the deadly calm that had earned her command of humanity's most isolated outpost. "How long have you been watching us?" Quillenth's scales flushed deep purple fear and embarrassment combined. "The Council has maintained observational protocols since your arrival, purely for scientific purposes, you understand, to ensure your adaptation was proceeding safely." 73 years, Patel said, his voice flat with rage. 73 years of watching us scratch survival from poison and death, cataloging our innovations, learning our weaknesses. Tanaka's enhanced eyes focused on the shuttle's interior, where she could see additional figures in combat armor. "Commander, I count 8 more passengers in full battle gear. And there's something else, their suits are equipped with atmospheric processors designed to handle extreme conditions like ours." Voss realized. "You didn't just study us, you stole our technology." The first shock came from the shuttle's hidden gunner, a plasma bolt that would have vaporized a normal human. Instead, it struck Patel's bionic arm, which had been designed to withstand the corrosive effects of Kepler's garden. The energy discharge scattered harmlessly across its reinforced surface. "Hostile contact," Tanaka shouted, diving behind the equipment. Great as more shots erupted from the shuttle, her mining charge flew in a perfect arc, landing inside the craft's engine compartment. Voss rolled sideways, her hand coming up with a weapon that looked like it had been cobbled together for mining equipment and scrap metal. It fired projectiles designed to punch through reinforced habitat walls, and they went through Velthari armor like tissue paper. The explosion from Tanaka's charge tore through the shuttle's rear section, but the armored figures were already deploying their stolen human atmospheric gear, allowing them to operate in Kepler's toxic environment. "All stations, this is command," Voss broadcast as plasma fire lit up the landing pad. "We are under attack. Repeat, New Vanguard Station is under attack." Across the colony, alarms began to wail, in the deep mining tunnels, in the sealed laboratories, in the harsh environment training facilities. 3 or 4 more humans heard the call and began to move. They moved with the efficiency of people who had spent their entire lives, one mistake away from death, carrying weapons designed for creatures tough enough to survive in hell. The galaxy had made its biggest mistake, yet it had given humanity time to prepare. The main assault came at dawn, when Kepler's twin suns painted the toxic sky the color of fresh blood. Commander Voss stood in New Vanguard Station's central command center, watching sensor displays that showed death approaching from every direction. 16 ships. Lieutenant Tanaka reported, her cybernetic eyes processing incoming data streams faster than any organic brain could handle. Mixed fleet Velthari, Kethmaran, and gods. "Commander, 3 hegemony dreadnoughts." "The hegemony?" Chief Patel looked up from the weapons console he'd been jury-rigging. "Those bastards haven't been seen since the Rim Wars. What's their stake in this?" Through the command center's reinforced view ports, they could see the first wave of assault shuttles piercing the planet's atmosphere. Unlike the diplomatic vessel from the day before, these craft were military-grade, their hulls gleaming with energy shielding, and their weapons ports already glowing with charge buildup. "Marek, report," Voss called into her comm dot from the mining complex 15 kilometers below the surface. Marek Kowalski's gravelly voice crackled back through layers of electromagnetic interference. "Tunnel charges are set, Commander. If they try to breach from below, we'll bring half the mountain down on their heads." But his pause carried the weight of bad news. "We've got problems. Deep scans are picking up seismic charges planted around the colony perimeter. They're not trying to capture us, they're planning to bury us." Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice joined the channel from her position in the medical bay. "Commander, I've been analyzing the plasma residue from yesterday's attack. The energy signatures match weapons designed specifically for use against human physiology. They've been planning this for years." Voss felt ice form in her veins despite the station's sweltering heat. "They didn't just study us. They prepared to exterminate us." The first wave of shuttles touched down outside the station's defensive perimeter, disgorging troops in environment suits that bore the unmistakable design signatures of human engineering, stolen technology, refined and mass-produced for an army of killers. All defensive positions, prepare to engage. Voss broadcast throughout the colony. "Remember, they're using our own innovations against us. Stay mobile, use the environment, and make them pay for every meter." The Battle of New Vanguard Station began with a sound like thunder. The aliens' opening barrage struck the colonies. Outer defenses' energy barriers designed to repel the planet's constant acid storms. The shields held for precisely 17 seconds before catastrophic failure sent cascades of sparks through the station's power grid. Sniper Dubois opened fire from his position atop the atmospheric processing tower, his rifle a hybrid of mining laser and magnetic accelerator, sending hypersonic projectiles through 3 enemy soldiers. Before they could react, a return fire forced him to abandon his position as the tower's superstructure began to melt. Under concentrated plasma assault in Sector 7, Corporal Jin Watanabe led a squad of miners in a fighting retreat through corridors designed for industrial equipment. Their weapons were improvised, but deadly mining charges turned into grenades, cutting torches modified for combat, and industrial exoskeletons that turned ordinary humans into walking tanks. "They're breaching the main hangar," came the call from Private Torres, his voice tight with pain. Blood streamed down his face from a plasma burn that had missed his skull by centimeters. "I count 30 hostiles, heavy armor, moving toward Central Command." Voss made the call that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Seal the blast doors. All personnel in sectors 4 through 6 evacuate to secondary positions. We're flooding those sections with processed atmosphere. The colony's life support system had been designed for survival, not warfare. But humans had learned to weaponize everything. On Kepler's garden, the processed atmosphere was air that had been filtered through the planets. Natural chemistry concentrated sulfuric compounds that would eat through enemy equipment, while being merely uncomfortable for humans adapted to the environment. Screams echoed through the station's corridors as the chemical cloud rolled through the sealed sections. Alien soldiers, even protected by their stolen environmental gear, found their equipment failing as compounds they hadn't anticipated ate through seals and filters. But the victory was temporary. More shuttles landed every minute, and the deep charges around the colony's perimeter were counting down. Through the command center's external cameras, Voss could see enemy engineers placing additional explosive devices, preparing to turn new Vanguard station into a crater. "Commander," Tanaka said, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "Long-range sensors are detecting something else. A massive signature moving in from the outer system." Patel's bionic arm sparked as he rerouted power to their remaining defensive systems. "Please tell me it's reinforcements." "Negative. It's a hegemony world killer." Tanaka's enhanced eyes flickered as she processed the impossible data. "They're not just planning to bury us, Commander. They're planning to sterilize the entire planet." The implications hit like a physical blow. This wasn't about recruiting humans for a war, it was about eliminating them entirely. 73 years of study had convinced the galaxy that humanity was too dangerous to exist, even in exile. "Time to world killer arrival," Voss asked. 6 hours, 18 minutes. Through the command center speakers, they could hear the sounds of battle raging throughout the colony. Human voices calling for ammunition, crying out in pain, coordinating desperate defensive actions against overwhelming odds. 37 people standing against an army, armed with mining equipment and 73 years of rage. Voss looked at her officer scarred, augmented, toughened by a lifetime of survival on a world that tried to kill them every day. They looked back with expressions of grim determination. "All stations," she broadcast. "This is command. Enemy forces are deploying orbital bombardment assets. We have 6 hours to either stop them or ensure they regret every second of the next 6 hours. She paused, thinking of all the humans who had died on this poisoned world. All the children who had grown up breathing filtered air and drinking processed water. All the dreams that had been forged in hell. "They called us Deathworlders," she said finally. "Time to show them what that really means." The tactical shift came from an unexpected source. 12-year-old Zara Okafor, the youngest resident of New Vanguard Station. She found Commander Voss in the collapsed remains of what had been the observation deck, where the acid rain now poured through gaping holes in the reinforced plasteel. "Commander," Zara said, her voice carrying the steady calm that marked all children born on Kepler's garden. "I've been monitoring their communications. They're afraid." Voss looked up from the tactical display she'd been studying, noting the way rain droplets hissed against her exposed skin without causing burns. Zara stood in the downpour, wearing nothing but standard colony coveralls, her dark skin gleaming with the protective oils that all garden-born humans secreted naturally. "Afraid of what?" "Of us going underground." Zara held up a salvaged comm unit she'd been tinkering with. "Their commanders keep talking about containing the threat to surface operations. They don't want us to retreat to the deep tunnels." Lieutenant Tanaka, coordinating defensive fire from behind an overturned mining crawler, paused in her targeting calculations. "Why would they care if we run?" The answer came from Chief Patel, who was studying seismic readings on his damaged console. "Because they know what we built down there. 73 years of mining operations, and we've hollowed out half the mountain range. The deep tunnels aren't just shelters, they're a weapon system." Voss felt understanding dawn like one of Kepler's brutal sunrises. The colony hadn't just adapted to survive on a death world, they'd turned the planet itself into a weapon. The mining charges Marek had mentioned weren't just defensive measures. They were part of something larger. "Give me a direct line to all section chiefs," she ordered. "We're changing tactics." The retreat began systematically, while the aliens continued their assault on the station's surface installations. 37 humans melted away into access tunnels, maintenance shafts, and mining elevators that descended into the planet's toxic depths. They moved like ghosts through passages carved from living rock, carrying weapons jury-rigged from industrial equipment, and knowledge earned through decades of survival. Dr. Vasquez led the first phase, guiding wounded colonists through medical stations she'd established in natural caverns 30 meters below the surface. The caves were lit by bioluminescent cultures she developed from Kepler's native extremophile organisms, life forms that thrived in conditions that would sterilize most worlds. "They're following us," reported Sniper Du Bois from his new position in a ventilation shaft that emerged to kilometers from the main complex. Through his scope, he could see alien soldiers rappelling into the tunnel entrances, their stolen atmospheric equipment struggling to cope with the increasing concentration of toxic gases. "Let them come," Voss replied. She stood in the colony's deepest chamber, a vast excavation that extended nearly a kilometer into Kepler's crust. Around her, mining equipment that had been designed to extract valuable ores from poison rock hummed with new purpose. Marek Kowalski's voice echoed through the cavern's natural acoustics. "Charges are armed and synchronized, Commander. 17 mining points connected in a chain reaction pattern. Will we trigger this? It's going to destabilize the entire geological formation." "Casualties?" Voss asked. "Anyone on the surface dies. Anyone in the deep tunnels." He shrugged. "We've lived through worse." The aliens' pursuit through the tunnel system became a massacre. Corporal Watanabe and his mining crew had turned the passages into killing fields, using their intimate knowledge of the colony's layout to set ambushes that left enemy soldiers dissolved in pools of concentrated acid or crushed beneath precisely timed cave-ins. But the real slaughter began when the aliens reached the primary excavation chamber. Private Torres, positioned at the chamber's main entrance, watched through his rifle scope as enemy forces rappelled into what they thought was a hiding place. Instead, they found themselves in a vast hollow space surrounded by humans who had spent their entire lives working in three-dimensional mining environments. "Contact," Torres called, opening fire with a weapon that had been designed to blast through solid rock. The hypervelocity rounds, intended for excavation work, turned armored soldiers into clouds of superheated vapor. The battle in the deep tunnels lasted 4 to 7 minutes. When it ended, 83 alien soldiers lay dead in passages that would be their tombs forever. But the humans had paid a price. 7 of their own had fallen, including young Zara Okafor, who died setting charges that collapsed a tunnel on a squad of enemy infiltrators. Status report. Voss called as the last echo of gunfire faded through the caverns. "Surface installations are completely overrun." Tanaka reported from her position, monitoring the colony's sensor array. "But they're not celebrating. Long-range scans show the fleet commanders are pulling back their landing forces." "They figured it out," Patel said grimly. "They know what we're planning." Through the colony's deep-buried communication system, they could hear the frantic chatter of alien command frequencies. The enemy had realized late that the humans hadn't retreated underground to hide. They'd retreated to turn the planet itself into a weapon. "World killer ETA?" Voss asked. "For hours, 32 minutes, Tanaka replied. "But Commander, they're not waiting. The fleet is beginning orbital bombardment in 20 minutes. Voss looked around the excavation chamber at the faces of the 29 humans who remained. They were scarred, bloodied, and exhausted, but their expressions carried the same steady determination that had kept humanity alive. On Kepler's garden for 73 years, all stations, she broadcast, "This is command. Orbital bombardment incoming. All personnel to final positions. When those charges blow, everyone above ground dies, including us if we're not deep enough." She paused, thinking of the children who would never see the stars, the dreams that would die in these toxic tunnels, the future that was being stolen from them by species too afraid to let humanity survive. "But they'll remember us," she said finally. "Every species in the galaxy will remember what happens when you try to exterminate humans on their own death world." Above them, alien warships began to rain fire from orbit. Below them, mining charges that could shatter mountains prepared to turn Kepler's garden into something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The orbital bombardment began at 14:27 local time, turning new Vanguard station surface installations into a hellscape of molten metal and vaporized stone. From her position 3 kilometers underground, Commander Voss watched the sensor displays show her life's work being systematically erased by plasma beams that could level city blocks. "They're not holding back," Chief Patel observed, his bionic arm interfacing directly with the colony's seismic monitors. full military bombardment pattern. They're trying to cook us out of the deep tunnels. The mountain shook as another orbital strike found its target. Through the comm system, they could hear the last transmissions from the surface team's humans who had volunteered to stay behind and coordinate the defense. Knowing they would die when the bombardment began, Surface Team Alpha, this is Command, came the voice of Sergeant Rosa Martinez from Position 7. They're targeting the atmospheric processors. If those go, the whole surface environment becomes unbreathable even for us. Another voice crackled through the interference engineer Beck. Larson from the Power Distribution Center. Reactor containment is failing. I can hold it stable for maybe 10 more minutes. But then, the transmission cut off in a wash of static as a plasma beam found the reactor complex. The lights in the deep chamber flickered as backup power systems struggled to compensate for the loss of their primary energy source. 28, Dr. Vasquez said quietly, marking another name on her list. Beck Larson had known the risks when he'd volunteered to maintain power during the bombardment. Like all the surface teams, he'd chosen to die so that the others might have a chance. Lieutenant Tanaka's enhanced eyes glowed amber in the emergency lighting. Fleet positions are stabilizing. For the main assault, they're going to land troops as soon as the bombardment creates a cleared area. How many? Voss asked. Approximately 3,000 soldiers. Mixed species look like they're committing everything they have to ensure complete extermination. The number hit like a physical blow. 3,000 professional soldiers against 28 humans armed with mining equipment, hiding in tunnels that were slowly being collapsed by orbital fire. It should have been hopeless. Instead, Voss smiled. Marek, she called into her comm unit. Time to show these bastards why humans mine Deathworlds. From his position in the deepest excavation chamber, Marek Kowalski's voice carried a note of savage anticipation. Charges are armed and synchronized. Commander, 17 extraction points connected in the cascade pattern. When this goes off, it's going to be visible from orbit. The plan was elegant in its brutality. 73 years of mining operations had hollowed out vast sections of the mountain range. Beneath New Vanguard Station, the extracted materials had been replaced with a carefully balanced mixture of the planet's natural chemistry concentrated, acids, unstable compounds, and reactive gases that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. When the charges detonated, they wouldn't just collapse the tunnels. They would turn the entire mountain into a chemical weapon. First wave landing craft are touching down, Tanaka reported. I count 47 shuttles. They're deploying in standard assault formation around the crater, where the station used to be, through the colony's few remaining surface sensors. They could watch alien soldiers spreading out across the devastated landscape. The troops moved with professional competence. Their stolen human environmental gear allowing them to operate in conditions that would kill them within minutes otherwise. There. Good. Private Torres admitted from his position near the tunnel entrance. The young man had volunteered to serve as forward observer, knowing that when the charges detonated, his position would be one of the first to be affected. Not good enough, Corporal Watanabe replied. He was positioned deeper in the tunnel system, coordinating with the remaining miners to ensure the cascade reaction would achieve maximum effect. The aliens' advance into the tunnel system began cautiously. Their commanders had learned from the previous day's massacre, and they now moved in coordinated units with overlapping fields of fire and constant communication with orbital support. But they were still thinking in terms of conventional warfare. They didn't understand that they were walking into the largest industrial accident in galactic history. Contact in Tunnel 7, came the call from Sniper Du Bois. Estimated platoon strength, moving toward the excavation chambers. Contact in Tunnel 12, reported Private Chen from her concealed position. They're using some kind of detection equipment, probably scanning for life signs. The fighting began in earnest as alien forces encountered the first of the defensive positions. But this wasn't the desperate close-quarters combat of the previous day. This was humans using 73 years of industrial expertise to turn mining tunnels into weapons of mass destruction. Engineer Patricia Ossola triggered the first localized collapse, bringing down a section of Tunnel 4 on top of an advancing alien squad. The carefully placed charges didn't just block the passage, they released a cloud of caustic gases that ate through environmental suits and turned the tunnel into a tomb. Tunnel 4 is sealed, Ossola reported, her voice professional despite knowing she'd just killed 12 beings. Estimated 15 minutes before the gas cloud reaches critical concentration. More reports flooded in as the battle spread through the underground complex. Humans died. Veteran miner Jackson Falls caught a plasma bolt while setting charges in Tunnel 9. And medic Lisa Park was crushed when a support beam failed during a cave-in. She triggered to stop an alien advance, but for every human who fell, dozens of aliens died in conditions they couldn't have imagined in their worst nightmares. Tunnel sections flooded with acid, excavation chambers filled with toxic gas. Mining equipment turned into weapons that could slice through advanced armor like paper. Status report. Voss called as the main detonation countdown reached its final minutes. Tunnels 1 through 6 are sealed and flooded. Marek reported. Estimated. Alien casualties in those sections. Total. Tunnels 7 through 14 are compromised, but holding. Watanabe added. We've got breakthrough in 3 locations, but they're taking massive casualties trying to advance. Dr. Vasquez, monitoring from the medical station, provided the final count. Confirmed alien dead, approximately 800. Human casualties, 11 confirmed, 3 missing. Outside, the orbital bombardment continued, but with less intensity. The alien commanders were beginning to realize that their ground assault wasn't going according to plan. World Killer ETA, Voss asked. 2 hours, 47 minutes, Tanaka replied. But Commander, something's changed. The fleet is repositioning. I think they're preparing to retreat. Voss checked the countdown timer on the main detonation sequence. In 30 seconds, 17 mining charges would simultaneously detonate, triggering a chemical reaction that would turn the entire mountain range into a cloud of toxic gas. Visible from orbit. Delayed, she said quietly. Way too late. The countdown reached 0. The detonation that followed wasn't an explosion, it was the birth of a new kind of hell. 17 mining charges, each containing compounds refined from Kepler's gardens. Most toxic chemistry detonated simultaneously across a 15-kilometer underground network. The result was a chain reaction that had never been seen before in galactic history. An entire mountain range converting itself into a weapon. Commander, Voss felt the shock wave through 3 kilometers of solid rock. A tremor that seemed to shake the planet itself. Emergency lighting flickered as the deep bunker's structural supports groaned under stresses they'd never been designed to handle. Holy shit, breathed Chief Patel, watching his seismic monitors register readings that shouldn't have been possible. Commander, we just triggered a localized geological event. The entire surface chemistry is changing. Through their few remaining sensors, they could see the results. What had been Kepler's garden's normal toxic atmosphere was transforming into something far worse. A roiling cloud of superheated chemical compounds that rose into the sky like a poisonous mushroom cloud. Lieutenant Tanaka's cybernetic eyes processed the incoming data with mechanical precision. Surface temperature rising 37 degrees and climbing. Atmospheric composition. Commander, we've created an environment that would be lethal to every known galactic species within minutes, except us, Dr. Vasquez added quietly. She was monitoring her surviving patients, 17 humans in the deep medical bay, all of whom were showing normal vital signs despite being surrounded by an atmosphere that could dissolve steel. The alien fleet's reaction was immediate and panicked. Through intercepted communications, they could hear the hysteria in the command frequencies as ships that had been preparing for orbital bombardments suddenly found themselves fleeing from a planet that was trying to poison space itself. Fleet withdrawal confirmed, Tanaka reported. All assault shuttles are. Wait. Her enhanced hearing picked up something the others missed. Commander, there are still humans on the surface. The impossible transmission crackled through layers of electromagnetic interference. A voice that should have been silenced by the chemical hellstorm raging above them. Deep 6. This is Surface Alpha. Martinez here, still breathing, and we've got company. Sergeant Rosa Martinez had been written off as dead when the orbital bombardment began. Her surface position should have been vaporized in the first wave of plasma fire, but her voice was coming through clearly, and she sounded like she was enjoying herself. Rosa, report, Voss called, hardly daring to believe it. Atmospheric processing station held better than expected, Martinez replied. Lost the main structure, but the emergency systems are keeping a pocket of breathable air around the reactor core, and Commander, you need to see this. The video feed that came through was grainy and distorted, but it showed something that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about planetary chemistry. Alien soldiers, caught on the surface when the detonation occurred, were not just dying, they were dissolving. Their advanced environmental suits, designed from stolen human technology, were failing catastrophically as compounds they never anticipated ate through seals and filters. But more importantly, there were humans walking among them. Engineer Beck Larson, who they thought had died in the reactor explosion, was moving through the chemical storm wearing nothing but standard colony gear. His skin was red and blistered, but he was alive, functional, and armed with a mining torch that he was using to methodically execute alien soldiers to flee. How is this possible? Dr. Vasquez whispered. The answer came from an unexpected source. Young Zara Okafor's voice echoed through the comm system. She had survived the tunnel collapse, protected by emergency equipment that had triggered automatically when the charges detonated. "We're not the same species that got exiled here," she said simply. 73 years of adaptation, Commander. We've evolved. The implications were staggering. 73 years of living in conditions that should have killed them had done more than teach humans to survive. It had changed them at a fundamental level. The protective oils their skin secreted, the modifications to their respiratory systems, the enhanced tolerance for radiation and chemical exposure. These weren't just adaptations. They were evolution. In fast forward, surface teams, report status. Voss ordered, still struggling to process what she was seeing. Surface Alpha operational. Martinez responded, 3 survivors at my position. We've secured the reactor core and established a defensive perimeter. Surface Bravo here, came another voice. Engineer Larson, who should have been dead twice over. Atmospheric processor is maintaining local environment. I've got the KIA. But for effectives remaining. Surface Charlie responding, called private. Hammond from what had been the communications array. Lost the main dish, but backup systems are online. 6 survivors, and we've captured some interesting alien equipment. 13 humans had survived on the surface of a planet that had just become more toxic than a gas giant's atmosphere. They were walking through chemical clouds that could eat through starship hulls, breathing air that would kill a Velthari in seconds, and they were winning. The World Killer's approach changed everything. The massive vessel, designed to sterilize entire planets, had been accelerating toward Kepler's garden for hours. Its weapons could crack continental plates and boil oceans. But as it entered the system's outer reaches, its commanders faced a problem they'd never encountered. World Killer is slowing, Tanaka reported. They're actually stopping through the deep bunker's communication array. They could intercept fragments of the conversations taking place aboard the alien ships. What they heard was fear pure, unadulterated terror from species that had thought themselves the masters of galactic warfare. Atmospheric readings are impossible. Human biosignatures detected in the chemical storm. Request immediate withdrawal authorization. The Hegemony World Killer, a ship that had destroyed 17 inhabited worlds during the Rim Wars, was being held back by the fear of what humans might do to its crew if they got close enough to board it. Commander, Dr. Vasquez said, studying the medical data streaming in from the surface teams. I'm seeing cellular modifications that shouldn't be possible. Enhanced liver function, modified hemoglobin, restructured lung tissue. We're looking at adaptive changes that normally take millennia. How? Voss asked. Selective pressure. Vasquez replied. 73rd years of the weak dying and the strong reproducing in conditions that push every biological system to its limit. We've been living through accelerated evolution. The realization hit Voss like a physical blow. The galaxy hadn't exiled humanity to die on a death world. They had accidentally created a new species, one adapted specifically for warfaring conditions that would kill everything else. All stations, she broadcast. This is command. New tactical assessment. We are no longer fighting for survival. We are fighting for the right to leave this world and show the galaxy what Deathworlders really are. The battle's final phase began with the most audacious military action in human history. Using mining equipment that had been converted into spacecraft, the surface teams launched themselves directly at the alien fleet. Engineer Larson, flying a converted or hauler that should never have been space-capable, rammed his craft directly into a Velthari cruiser's engine section. The resulting explosion took out 2 additional ships and sent debris raining down on the planet's surface. Sergeant Martinez, using a modified atmospheric processor as a makeshift weapon, created a localized chemical storm in space itself, a cloud of Kepler's garden's toxic atmosphere that ate through alien hull plating like acid through paper. Fleet withdrawal confirmed, Tanaka announced as the remaining alien ships began their panicked retreat. All hostile vessels are moving out of the system at maximum velocity, but the world killer remained, its massive bulk hanging in space like a metallic moon. Its weapons were charging, preparing to sterilize the planet from a safe distance. Incoming transmission, Tanaka reported. It's from the world killer. The voice that came through was ancient, carrying the authority of a species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Humans of Kepler's garden. I am Supreme Commander HFY, the hegemony world killer final solution. You have one opportunity to surrender unconditionally. Voss looked around the deep bunker at the faces of her people. They were scarred, modified, evolved into something the galaxy had never seen before. They were the children of a death world, forged in poison and fire. This is Commander Kira Voss of New Vanguard Station, she replied. We have a counteroffer. Speak, leave now, and we'll let you live. The silence that followed lasted for 17 seconds. Then Supreme Commander HFY's laughter echoed through the comm system, the sound of a being who had destroyed worlds expressing genuine amusement. You threaten us. You are 28 primitives hiding in caves on a poisoned world. We're 28 humans who just turned our entire planet into a weapon, Voss corrected. And we're done hiding. The final countdown began not to destruction, but to something the galaxy had never imagined. Humanity was about to leave its deathworld prison, and it was leaving as something evolved beyond the galaxy's worst nightmares. The final solution fired its planet killer weapon. At 2347 Galactic Standard Time, the beam that lanced down from orbit carried enough energy to crack continental plates and boil oceans, more than sufficient to sterilize a world that had already been declared uninhabitable. Instead, something impossible happened. The beam struck Kepler's garden's surface and simply stopped the planet's atmosphere, transformed by the humans' industrial alchemy into a chemical composition unknown to galactic science, absorbed the energy and converted it into something else entirely. Atmospheric ionization cascade, Dr. Vasquez reported, her voice filled with scientific wonder despite the battle raging around them. The chemical compounds we've released are actually feeding on the world killer's energy output. Commander, Voss watched through the deep bunker's sensors as her poisoned world began to glow. The toxic clouds that had risen from the mining detonation were now pulsing with captured energy, growing brighter and more corrosive with each second of bombardment. They're charging our atmosphere, Chief Patel said, his bionic arm interfacing directly with the colony's modified sensor ray. Every shot they fire is making our chemical storm stronger. Supreme Commander HFY's voice crackled through the comm system, no longer carrying its previous note of amused superiority. Impossible. Our weapons are rated for stellar mass destruction. No normal planetary atmosphere, Voss interrupted. But we stopped being normal 73 years ago. The world killer fired again, pouring more energy into Kepler's garden's transformed sky. The result was a light show visible from neighboring star systems, a planet that glowed like a toxic star, its chemical atmosphere reaching energy saturation levels that began to affect nearby space. Lieutenant Tanaka's enhanced eyes tracked the impossible readings. Commander, the atmospheric discharge is creating electromagnetic interference across the entire system. The alien fleet's navigation systems are failing. Through intercepted communications, they could hear the panic spreading through the alien armada. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for millennia found themselves blind and helpless as their sophisticated electronics were overwhelmed by radiation patterns they'd never encountered. But the real change was happening on the surface, where the surviving humans were discovering the full extent of their transformation. Sergeant Martinez, standing in the open air of a planet that should have killed her instantly, watched alien soldiers who had been caught in the chemical storm begin to change. Their stolen environmental suits were failing, but instead of dying, they were adapting. Slowly, painfully, but adapting nonetheless. Commander, she reported, her voice filled with a mixture of horror and fascination. The atmospheric composition isn't just toxic to non-humans. It's converting them, forcing adaptation on a cellular level. Dr. Vasquez's medical sensors confirmed the impossible, genetic restructuring in real time. The chemical compounds are acting like a forced evolutionary catalyst. Any biological system exposed to sufficient concentration begins adapting. To survive in these conditions, the implications hit like a thunderbolt. Humanity hadn't just evolved to survive on a death world. They turned their world into an evolutionary weapon that could transform any species into something like themselves. All alien vessels Voss broadcast on open frequencies. This is your final warning. Leave this system immediately, or you'll discover what it really means to be a Deathworlder. The response came not from Supreme Commander HFY, but from a younger voice, desperate and terrified. Commander Voss, this is Navigation Officer Kylene aboard the Final Solution. Our atmospheric filters are failing. The energy discharge from your planet is affecting our life support systems. We can taste your world's chemistry in our air. Then you're beginning to understand. Voss replied, you tried to study us, steal from us, and exterminate us. Now you get to become us. The evacuation of the alien fleet was chaotic and desperate. Ships that had come to deliver genocide now fled in terror as their crews began experiencing the first stages of forced adaptation. Emergency medical protocols activated throughout the Armada, as beings who had never known chemical exposure found their cellular structure beginning to change. But not all of them made it out in time. 3 ships of Elthari cruiser, a Catamaran, destroyer, and a hegemony escort vessel suffered complete life support failure while still within the range of Kepler's Garden's transformed atmosphere. Their crews, faced with certain death, made a choice that would echo throughout galactic history. They landed incoming vessels, Tanaka reported. 3 ships requesting emergency landing clearance, granted, Voss ordered, and prepare medical facilities. We're about to have our first alien resonance. The survivors who emerged from those ships were changed beings, the Velthari, whose golden scales had dulled to mask Kepler's orange sunlight, the Catamaran, whose methane-breathing systems had adapted to process the planet's chemical atmosphere, the hegemony soldiers, whose ancient pride had been replaced by the humble gratitude of beings who had been given a second chance at life. Dr. Vasquez worked for 17 hours straight, treating beings whose biology was restructuring itself in real time. It's remarkable, she reported. They're not just surviving the adaptation, they're thriving. Enhanced respiratory capacity, improved chemical tolerance, modified cellular structures that make them more resistant to radiation. How many? Voss asked. 47 survivors total, all showing successful adaptation markers. Commander, they're becoming human, not genetically, but functionally. They're becoming suited for life on Deathworlds. 6 months later, New Vanguard Station had been rebuilt not as a mining colony, but as something entirely new. The Galactic Council's first embassy to a Deathworld, staffed by beings who had learned to survive in conditions that would kill their parent species. The humans had kept their promise. They left Kepler's Garden, but not as refugees or exiles. They left as teachers, carrying the knowledge of Deathworld survival to species that had suddenly discovered they needed it. The galaxy had changed. Worlds that had been written off as uninhabitable were now being colonized by mixed crews of adapted beings. Mining operations began on planets where the mere presence of atmosphere had once been considered impossible. Research stations were established in star systems too toxic for conventional exploration. Commander Voss stood in her new office aboard the diplomatic station orbiting Kepler's Garden, watching shuttles carry the latest group of volunteer adaptation candidates down to the planet's surface. They came from dozens of species, all seeking the transformation that would allow them to survive in conditions their ancestors couldn't have imagined. Status report. She called to her staff a mixture of born humans, adapted aliens, and hybrid offspring who represented something entirely new in galactic evolution. Colony 7 reports successful atmospheric conversion, replied Dr. Vasquez, whose research into forced adaptation had revolutionized galactic medicine. The Rigel system is now suitable for Deathworld adapted species. Mining Station 12 has struck another rare earth deposit, added Chief Patel, whose expertise in extreme environment engineering had made him the galaxy's most sought-after consultant. Estimated yield exceeds all previous records. Lieutenant Tanaka, now Admiral Tanaka of the Deathworld Defense Fleet, provided the military update. 7 new worlds have requested protection status. The hegemony is still refusing to acknowledge Deathworlder sovereignty, but they haven't violated our territorial claims for months. Voss smiled, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so distant and hostile. Humanity had been exiled to a Deathworld as punishment for their violence and unpredictability. Instead, they discovered that their greatest strength wasn't their capacity for destruction, it was their ability to adapt, survive, and transform even the most hostile environments into homes. The galaxy had called them Deathworlders as an insult. They turned it into a promise. Send a message to all Deathworld colonies, Voss ordered. Standard greeting protocol. The message that went out across subspace was simple, carrying the pride of beings who had learned to thrive where others could only die. This is new. Vanguard Station. Welcome to the Deathworld Alliance. We're here to help you survive anything the universe can throw at you. Because we've already survived worse. In the depths of space. On worlds that glowed with toxic beauty. In star systems where the very light was poison. Adapted beings looked up at alien skies and called them home. They were human and alien, evolved and evolving, united by their ability to take the galaxy's worst punishment and turn it into their greatest strength. They had been called Deathworlders. They had called it home.